You know, we are mostly water, and people don't realize it. We are like 2/3 water, and we are tap water. You know, tap water. We are not Evian or Perrier water from France or from Switzerland. No, no, no. We are tap water. Okay, that is 2/3 of us. What is the other third of us? The most common and abundant elements in the planet. We are not made of gold and platinum. No, 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 no. We are made of water, that is oxygen and hydrogen, with a base of carbon. You know, we are organic matter, carbon based. And then we have nitrogen, we have calcium, we have potassium, we have sodium. We basically are 8 elements. 8 elements. 99% of us, 8 elements. And when we understand this in physical principles, in first principles, we will be able to replicate this. And because we are so cheap, actually we don't cost 100 euros in raw materials. You don't cost 100 euros. I don't cost 100 euros. Something as cheap as we are, less than 100 euro, will be able to keep indefinitely for 10 euros per year. This is my forecast. To become immortal will cost 10 euros. Comb your hair properly so that it doesn't look all over the place.
You know, I am a philosophy professor, so I think I can have this wild hair. You know, it's
yeah, it's in character.
It almost goes with the territory, right? We were talking about you while we were waiting, and we said, you know, I wonder where in the world we catch him coming from. So what's the answer to that?
Well, happy to be back from 3 countries in the Middle East, in the Arab Gulf or Persian Gulf, depending on who calls it. And now planning my next trips to Mexico, El Salvador, and Venezuela. I will be in 3 Latin American countries. All excited to talk about the future and immortality.
That's your famous battle cry, immortality. I think that's the first time I saw you. I heard immortality.
Yes, and I also like to shout, Viva la Revolución!
Well, you are from Venezuela, so I guess that's a habit.
Yes, and in Spanish it sounds very nice. Revolución!
We heard you shout that at the ARDD conference in Copenhagen.
Yes. Even though, you know, the Scandinavians are normally very quiet, but I'm not a Scandinavian.
No, it's wonderful. I mean, they're working very hard to not say too much.
Yes.
But you are bringing the energy to every place you are, for sure.
We want to be immortal, to be happy, to be excited, not to be bored.
So, José Cordeiro is a renowned futurist, engineer, and author whose work spans fields as diverse as artificial intelligence, energy, and human longevity. With a degree in mechanical engineering from MIT and extensive experience in global think tanks like the Millennium Project and experience of Singularity University, José has dedicated his career to exploring how exponential technologies will shape our future. He is the author of The Death of Death, a fantastic book co-written with David Wood, where he argues that aging will soon... Peter, where is your copy, Peter?
I think it's just behind.
You don't
me.
even have the tie.
Yeah, I know. I do have the balloons that Jose gave me, though.
Oh.
So I'll probably use them at my daughter's next birthday.
Well, there's a lot of merch here. So, in this really fantastic work, he argues that aging will soon be reversible And he has lectured in over 50 countries on topics ranging from renewable energy to transhumanism. In addition to his academic and technological pursuits, he has been actively involved in politics, running for the European Parliament, with a platform centered on longevity and scientific progress. His activism focuses on accelerating research and policy changes that make age reversal and indefinite life extension a reality. José Cordeiro, welcome to Levity.
Thank you so much, Patrick and Peter. It is a pleasure to be talking with you and all your audience to tell you about the exciting things happening in longevity in the next 2 decades.
Absolutely. You know, I gave a very, very short introduction here because there's so many accomplishments and so many things you've been doing in your life that I could go on for a much longer time introducing you. But the impression I got was, well, here is a man who really needs more time.
Well, all of us will need more time, and there are so many things to do in the future. So that is why I am dedicating my life right now to cure aging, because aging is the worst tragedy in the planet. In advanced countries, in OECD countries like Sweden, Spain, most of Europe, North America, Japan, the number one enemy, the number one cause of death is aging. Age-related diseases kills 90% of people in OECD countries. It is true that there are some other causes of death, but all of them combined only kill 10% of the population. And let me talk about those 10% of the things that we worry so much about, because they are important, like, for example, terrorism, wars, climate change, AIDS, malaria, so many other diseases, COVID, for example, homicides, suicides. But if you add all of those combined, they only represent 10% of the people dying in advanced countries. So what does this mean? That aging really is killing 90% of all people. Even in poorer countries in Africa, now 60% of people in the poorest countries in Africa die of age-related diseases. In fact, in Africa now, the problem is not starvation. The problem now is obesity as well in most of Africa. So the world has changed radically, and we don't die anymore at age 10 or 20 or 30 like our ancestors, when life expectancy was only about 20 years of life expectancy at the time of the Roman Empire. Only 20 years. Today we have life expectancy in many countries of 80 years and even more here in Spain. For example, Madrid is the longest living city in the European Union, with 85.2 years of life expectancy at birth in Madrid, which is top in the European Union. So anyway, my point again is that I am dedicating my life to kill the number one killer in the world, even in Africa, I repeat, which is age-related diseases.
So the World Health Organization, it recognizes age-related diseases, but they don't go as far right as saying that aging is a disease or aging is the problem directly. It's not an indication, right?
In fact, I support declaring aging as a disease because it will bring in more resources and also public spending and therefore private spending into curing aging. But regardless of your definition, if aging is a disease or not, we need to be clear that aging kills 90% of the people in advanced economies. So if it is a disease or if it is not a disease, it is killing 90% of the people in the OECD countries. And that is what we have to solve.
It's quite interesting, right, that you have to say this, that people would know if they got to think a little bit about it. But it's as if aging is kind of a protective class of events where we say, for example, list the greatest causes of cancer, and then people forget to put aging there. They put smoking there first.
Yes, and my answer to that is that most people want to cure cancer, all types of cancer. So, or most people want to cure neurodegenerative diseases like Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, dementia. More people want to cure heart attacks, cardiac problems. So if you want to cure all of those things, it is better to cure aging, because if you stop people from aging, they will not get Alzheimer's, they will not get heart attacks, they will not get dementia, etc., etc. So aging is really the mother of all of these diseases. All these chronic diseases come because of aging. And in fact, smoking is not good, but aging is much worse. I have seen some numbers that, smoking is bad. It increases probability of cancer, maybe 50%. But aging actually increases probability of cancer hundreds and hundreds of times the older and older you are.
I like that example where they talk about a 30-year-old obese person who is a chain smoker, and his risk or her risk of dying is actually much less than a healthy, so-called healthy 85-year-old.
Yes, we need to think in those terms again. And again, because most people want to cure cancer, more people want to cure dementia, more people want to cure heart attacks. So we need to explain to them that if we cure aging, we cure all of those chronic diseases, because aging really is at the center. Aging is like the mother of all these chronic diseases.
And yet, it's like almost protected, or people don't want to see it as the enemy, but they want to kind of play nice with it.
Yes, it is like the Stockholm syndrome. You know the Stockholm syndrome, that you basically made peace with your enemy. You are at peace with your enemy. But no, we should not be at peace with death and aging. We have to be at total war. And I am at total war against aging and death. In fact, I want to kill death before death kills me.
I mean, you are a tremendous crusader for this project. And you just talked about your most recent travels. So how much does it take you around the world in a year?
Well, I am actually very privileged that because of my bestseller, The Death of Death, which is now in over a dozen languages, first published in my mother tongue in Spanish, with my British co-author, David Wood, who invented the first operating system for smartphones. He developed Symbian, which was used with the Nokia telephones. Before Android, before the iPhone, there was Nokia and there was Symbian. So David Wood invented that. And so about 10 years ago, we decided to write on the number one problem of humanity, which, I repeat, is not wars, is not terrorism, is not climate change, is not AIDS, is not malaria. The number one problem in the planet is aging. So we wrote this book, immediate bestseller in Spanish. Then we have been publishing in other languages. It just came out also in Chinese. I'm very proud in Chinese, even though they changed the name. In Chinese, it means from longevity to eternal life. In China, they don't like the word death. And also, it came out in Arabic. And so I was in 3 Arab countries. I was in Qatar, in Saudi Arabia, and in the United Arab Emirates, mostly Dubai and Abu Dhabi, talking about the death of death. In Arabic also has a different name. It's not the death of death. It is something like death is slowly dying, or something like that. My Arabic is not good, nor my Chinese, but I do understand Spanish, and I do understand English, and so I made ties for my book. This is my tie for the Spanish book. You can see The Death of Death. It has my face. And my co-author has the same tie with his face, The Death of Death. And in English, similar, we have ties for The Death of Death with the book cover and our faces. So we are very proud that this book is a bestseller in over 12 languages and soon in 10 more languages, hopefully soon also in Swedish. But anyway, I'm continuously traveling, talking about the death of death in Japanese, in Chinese, in Arabic, in Russian, in German, in French, in Portuguese, in Spanish, and many more languages coming up. So I do travel and I try to communicate this to people, not only in Spain, where I am based, but all over Europe, because as you mentioned, I have been candidate to the European Parliament, and my number one priority was the creation of the European Anti-Aging Agency. In Europe, we don't have anything against anti-aging, and we should, because what is killing Europeans, I repeat, is not terrorism, is not wars, is not climate change, is not the Martians. It is aging. Aging is what is killing Europeans. And also Japanese, and also Russians, and even the poorest Africans. We are all dying of aging. So this is the common enemy of humanity. And that is why we need to unite for the first time, the whole planet against aging. And there is a good example, which was COVID, the COVID pandemic, which was a small pandemic, very small pandemic in historic terms. I repeat, very small pandemic. Let me give you a big pandemic. The Black Death, the bubonic plague, the bubonic death a few centuries back killed 1 out of every 3 Europeans. Over 30% of the people in Europe died of the black bubonic plague. That was the biggest plague pandemic in history that we know of. 1/3 of the Europeans died of that. How many people have died of COVID? It is horrible, of course. Maybe 10 million people, maybe even worse, 20 million people. We don't know for sure. But it's certainly not 1 out of every 3 people. But what did we learn with COVID? That the planet can unite against a common enemy. And the common enemy is not really COVID. COVID is a small pandemic, because we have a big global pandemic, which is aging and death. And the whole of humanity needs to be united against this common enemy, because we are all dying. And if we don't stop aging, we are going to die. So if COVID, a small pandemic, paralyzed our planet for 2 years, a small pandemic, imagine what we should do now, because we are close to stopping aging, to reverse aging, to cure aging. This should really unite all of humanity for something good, for something positive, because life is good.
I think it's very good to emphasize exactly that. In a world with so many divisions and quarrels, it's very good to have a common cause, a very positive cause, something that everyone should care about.
Absolutely. Our common enemy for the whole planet is not the Martians, forget about the Martians, or the lunatics, if there are some lunatics. No. The problem is that we are all dying, and we need to be united against aging and death.
I think the whole COVID episode, we learned so much from it. One is that sometimes when old people's life are at stake, we can mobilize the whole world to do something about it. But only when it's as you pointed out, Peter, last time, only as if it's a kind of viral and quickly moving thing, then we can mobilize. But we can't mobilize when they're just dying from aging. When in fact, the most COVID deaths are deaths from aging as well, since the average age was it 80, right? Something like that.
Yeah, that's a great irony that all of a sudden it was very important to protect the elderly. Of course, everyone else too, but since most people who died from COVID were sick or old, it was very important, and then the pandemic was over and we're back to zero. It's not important anymore.
Yes. In fact, the number one risk factor of death was your age. The older you were, the highest the probability of dying of COVID. Number one risk factor of COVID deaths. But it is the same with every other chronic disease. What is the number one risk factor for Alzheimer's? Your age. What is the number one risk factor for heart attacks? Your age. What is the number one risk factor for dementia? Your age. Aging is the enemy. Aging is the problem. Aging is the mother of all these chronic diseases. We need to stop aging. We need to reverse aging. We need to cure aging for once and for all. Not just COVID, not just cancer, not just dementia. We need to cure aging. This is the big elephant in the room. I don't know why people don't realize it. The elephant is aging.
Very good again, in a time where people are turning on each other. It's better we save our energy to fight, as you point out, the most awful of all enemies. So you just came back from the Arab world, Qatar and Saudi Arabia and Arab Emirates. How is the reception there, and what was going on there? Was that all the last 2 months, or?
Actually, there was a big conference in Saudi Arabia, sponsored by the Evolution Foundation. Evolution means health plus evolution. Evolution Foundation was created by the royal family of Saudi Arabia, and it was endowed with $20 billion to stop aging, to reverse aging, to understand aging, the biological basis of aging, and do something about it. So this foundation had a big conference called the Global Health Span Summit. The first one was in November of 2023, when they also announced the biggest prize in human history, which is the X Prize Health Span, with the X Prize Foundation and with Evolution Foundation. This prize has an amount of $101 million, and for the year 2030 to be able to reverse aging at least 10 years. I repeat, this is incredible. The biggest prize in human history, $101 million, to reverse aging between 10 and 20 years in 3 biological systems by the year 2030. So the winner, and there are about 600 teams competing right now. Actually, in this new conference that was the first week of February 2025, they announced there are already 600 teams participating. These teams are about anything possible. Universities, big pharma companies, startups, individuals, groups of researchers, anything goes, and anyone can register to participate in this prize. And the goal, I repeat, is that by December of 2030, you need to show scientifically that you can rejuvenate people between 10 and 20 years. And this is exciting. This is actually accelerating research and discovery. We still have 5 years, actually a bit more, because it is in December of 2030 when the prize will be awarded. So many teams are doing anything. They are trying anything, and it is so fascinating. People working on stem cells, people working on gene therapies, people working on telomeres, people working on epigenetic reprogramming, people working on almost everything related to aging. And so we are going to discover many things. So anyway, I participated in this Global Health Span Summit in Saudi Arabia, the first time in November 2023 and the second time in February 2025. And I was there. There were 3,000 people from all over the world. So that this also shows how much interest there is into reversing aging. And I used this conference to go and present my book in Arabic. I show here again the death of death in Arabic, in Saudi Arabia, in Riyadh, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, in Qatar, in the capital Doha, and also in the United Arab Emirates, Dubai, and Abu Dhabi, the capital. So, people everywhere are interested in reversing aging, and also this goes beyond religions. It is not just Christians or Buddhists or Hindus, also Muslims and Jews. No one likes to age. And actually, this is the beauty, because religion actually promises immortality. If you are good, you have good immortality. If you are bad, you might have bad immortality. But they basically tell you, yes, you can have immortality sometime in the future and somewhere else. But then how about if we can have immortality here and now? If we can stop aging, if we can reverse aging here and now? Well, this is going to happen. We are very close, and I repeat, I am very excited that by the end of 2030, we will have some therapies, the first therapies to reverse aging.
Should we say that we're not sponsored by Jose?
I love to hear this, because you are the, let's say, the scientific and technological optimist here too.
But not only me, more people are talking about this. Actually, in my book in English, The Death of Death, I have people like Ray Kurzweil, who is the big promoter of the singularity, saying that he believes we will actually begin reversing aging by 2030, which is what we call longevity escape velocity. Longevity escape velocity. That means that if we make it to 2030, we will be winning 1 year per year and more and more. So if we make it from 2029 to 2030, we get 1 extra year of life. Still aging, but we gain time, we win time, and every time more and more. So by the year 2045, we believe that we will be able not only to get more extra time, but to reverse aging, which is the goal, reverse aging. And Ray Kurzweil just published this new book last year, The Singularity's Nearer. In The Singularity's Nearer, which is the continuation to his previous book, The Singularity is Near, 20 years ago, he wrote The Singularity is Near in 2005. This just came out almost 20 years later, and he keeps his 2 magic dates, 2 very important dates. I repeat, between 2029 and 2030, we will reach longevity escape velocity, and also we will pass the Alan Turing test. The Alan Turing test means that we will not know anymore if we are talking to a human or to a machine, to our artificial intelligence. This actually might happen before 2029, because artificial intelligence is improving exponentially. And similarly, longevity escape velocity, and I repeat, the X prize health span with evolution is for the year 2030. And then we have the second day that he defends in his book, and he has been talking about this for decades, since last century, since last millennia. Ray Kurzweil, since the 1980s, 1990s, he has been talking about the singularity in the year 2045. He has never changed this date, and it is important to keep that in mind, that for decades he has kept saying that the singularity and immortality will be reached by the year 2045, because at that time we will have a mega planetary artificial intelligence, more intelligent than all of humans combined, which is fantastic. We will have not only natural intelligence, we will also have artificial intelligence, and we will become more intelligent, and we will be able to solve the aging problem. So by 2045, big cloud, planetary artificial intelligence, and immortality through biological rejuvenation. So we will be able to live indefinitely young, not indefinitely old. No one wants to be immortally old. but we will be able to be immortally young, or at least live as long as you want, young and prosper.
I love how you said when we first met in Montenegro, you told some people, you said, next time we meet, I'll be younger.
Yes, Patrick, this is a good point. Actually, I want to see this program, this podcast, in 2045, because in 2045, I believe, I'm convinced, like my friend Ray Kurzweil, that we will be younger because we will be rejuvenated through biotechnology. And so we will watch this program and we will see each other and we will say, oh, Patrick, Peter, do you remember this video when we were old? When we were old in the year 2025, those old days when we were old.
Yeah, you know, Jose, in our second episode, I was interviewed. So when we started this podcast, I interviewed Patrick for the first episode, and he interviewed me for the second. Because we wanted to make as many mistakes as we could before we invited guests. But I remember telling Patrick that I'm going to be a soccer or a football player again when I get young again.
Absolutely, and many other things. Because if you live indefinitely young, you will be able to do many things. For example, I will be able to learn Swedish and to speak Swedish perfectly, because I'll have enough time to learn and to practice, but not just Swedish. I will learn probably Russian, Chinese, even some languages from other planets like Vulcan or Klingon. I will speak the Klingon language. So I can go and visit these planets in a Star Trek mission.
That's a great illustration of how when we have more time, certain things become more valuable. That is, learning new things become more valuable when you have more time to then extract benefit from those things that you've learned. I've never learned Icelandic, despite being in Reykjavik so many times, flying back to Sweden. But it's because I'm only staying there for such a brief period. There's no point in learning it. But I think that it's also true about other things. You feel life is short, so you can't even begin to do things that you really would like to do.
If we're going to talk about grand futures, we're going to get all the abundance we can dream of. So we'll also don't have to work if we don't want to. And so we'll have plenty of time to pursue our dreams.
Yes, and when you talk about work, you know, the concept of work has changed throughout history. About 20,000 years ago, our human ancestors actually had to work just getting food. That was all the work. And we were hunters and gatherers. We were hunting animals and gathering vegetables and fruits. This is what we did for millennia until we invented agriculture. Agriculture was only invented about 10,000 years ago. And so we changed our jobs, our work, from hunters, gatherers into farmers. And until about 200 years ago, still 80% of humans were farmers, 80% of people. And there were then no more hunters and gatherers, really. So, and how many farmers do you know today? Let me give you the example of the USA. The USA, which is the biggest agricultural powerhouse in the world, produces food for itself, which is about 350 million people, and through exports, another 350 million people, with less than 2% of the population farming. Imagine, the country, the USA, passed from 80% farmers into 2% farmers to feed 700 million people. So we have become incredibly productive in agriculture. So, and the same will happen with the current jobs today. We keep on moving through what is called the Abraham Maslow pyramid of needs. You know, first on the bottom, survival. And then we will go into more and more interesting, self-fulfilling activities, including jobs. I think the jobs of the future will be so much more interesting than being a farmer, or even further back in the past, being a hunter or a gatherer. Imagine trying to hunt in the middle of the savannas in Africa, and then a lion or a tiger comes after you and they want to hunt you. That's not good if you are the food of the lion or the tiger. So anyway, we are moving into a world of new possibilities, of new jobs and new works, which will be totally different from what we do today.
I mean, what you're saying is also demonstrated in the world value surveys. That you can see that the countries with that have the most security, economic security, like Sweden, there they look at work more as self-expression.
Absolutely, and that should be the future for everybody. That we should not work just to eat or to run from the lions or the tigers. We should work to do what is fulfilling, what allows us to grow, to learn, to teach, to be more human. And I think this is the future of humanity, to be more human and humane.
Matt Ridley, he wrote a book called Rational Exuberance. In some sense, because it's better than the word optimist, because optimist has the connotation that you're you're imagining things a little bit too bright. But the rational exuberance comes partly from recognizing Kurzweil's insight that you write about in chapter 4 in your book, the exponentiality, that people might think now we are talking in a kind of overly optimistic way, but no, I mean, certain things don't develop just linearly and slowly.
Let me give you an example, because this is so important. Technology is changing exponentially, but we don't see it. We don't really understand it because we think linearly. Humanity evolved in a linear world with linear things, but now technology is changing exponentially. 40 years ago, when I was at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology, where I studied, I got my bachelor's, my master's, and half of my PhD at MIT, I used this technology. These are the so-called IBM punch cards. Punch cards because we needed to make little holes. We need to punch this with a machine, of course, but we had to make holes to write computer programs and to store memory. This was both memory and for making programs. These punch cards have different sizes, but let's say an average one like this, it's 10 by 100. 10 by 100, which gives 1,000. 1,000 is 1K. This was 1K of memory. And once you made holes, you could not change those holes. Those holes we have here, you could not undo. The holes stayed there, so we could not modify this with mechanical memories. And so the first electromagnetic memories were created. And I have an example here of the first floppy disk that was 8 inches big, 8 inches. And it was also 1K. The first generation was also 1K of memory, which is nothing. But 40 years ago, 1K was a lot, 1K. I like to say in Spanish, the letter K is pronounced K in Spanish. So I say one mechanical K plus one electromagnetic K makes one caca, one caca of memory. We had one caca of memory. I used this at the Massachusetts Institute of Technology. I used caca. Fortunately, after I graduated, I stopped using just one caca, and I used floppy disks of 5 inches and a quarter that were 512 cacas. So from one caca to 512 cacas. 5-10 years later, we had another improvement, and we had a smaller floppy disk, 3 1/4 inches and 1.4 mega. We moved from caca to mega, and now I have here a USB pen drive of 1 terabyte. 1 terabyte. So in 40 years since I went to MIT, I have seen caca, and now I see terabytes. And this keeps on moving exponentially. This has not stopped. In fact, in 20 years, you will remember me and you will remember caca. But this will not be caca. 1 terabyte is the caca of the future. This is the caca in 10 years in the future, even more caca in 20 years. But let me tell you, 1 terabyte is a lot of memory. In fact, the human genome is about 3 gigabytes of data. 3 gigabytes of data is your genome, my genome. So this is 1 terabyte, which is 1,000 gigabytes. So here I can feed 333 humans of 3 gigabytes of data. So 333 humans and 1 little cat fitting here.
We should say that Jose, if people are only listening to this, we should say that Jose not only has his merchandise on display here, but he also has actually other props as floppy disks and punch cards and USB sticks. So if anyone wants to watch this fantastic show, they should go to YouTube.
Yes, these are museum pieces. You know this? I have not seen this in over 25 years. 8 inches long, one caca. So yes, this is a museum piece. Actually, talking about caca and museum pieces, 40 years ago, when I wrote my first thesis, bachelor's thesis at MIT, I used a technology that maybe you have seen in the museums called typewriter. I used a typewriter, which is a caca. It's a total caca today, but I used a typewriter at MIT for my first bachelor's thesis. Anyway, so you see the exponential trend, and this is important because now biology, medicine is becoming digitized, and it is therefore changing exponentially. So the human genome is 3 gigabytes, and we can fit many human genomes here. The first human genome took 13 years to sequence between 1990, which was the beginning of the Human Genome Project, until 2003. 13 years, and it cost almost $3 billion to sequence just one human genome. 13 years and $3 billion. Today, in 2025, you can already sequence your genome in a couple of days for a couple of $100. It's incredible. From 3 billion and 13 years to $200 in 2 days. And again, that is caca. Compared to what it will be in 10 years. In 10 years, you will sequence your full genome in 1 hour for $10. That is what is happening now that we have digitized biology. We have digitized medicine. And that is why finally medicine is going to advance exponentially, because we have sequenced the code of life, the human genome. We are identifying diseases, and we will understand how to cure diseases. All of them. We will cure all of diseases in the next 2 days, beginning also with the mother of all diseases, which is aging.
Jose, can I ask you? I mean, you were at MIT, and you've mentioned Ray Kurzweil a couple of times here. Do you consider yourself friends with Ray? And was your interest in longevity and exponential technology? Did you grow that independently, so to speak, from Ray, or were you inspired by him? Or can you talk me through that?
Yes.
History that you share.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I have known Ray Kurzweil for over 3 decades. Actually, he also studied in my alma mater in MIT, and we had a common professor who was also his mentor, Marvin Minsky. Marvin Minsky, who was one of the fathers of artificial intelligence. He died in 2016, and now he's cryonically suspended in Alcor Life Extension Foundation. But anyway, Marvin Minsky was the mentor of Ray Kurzweil, and also he was one of my favorite professors. I studied mechanical engineering at MIT, but I took courses in artificial intelligence, in computer science, and many other things. And so I got interested in these ideas of artificial intelligence. And obviously, Ray Kurzweil was already a personality. When I was a student, also there was someone a bit older than me, Peter Diamandis, who was studying aerospace engineering at MIT and also medicine at Harvard. Incredible. He is an engineer from MIT and a medical doctor from Harvard. And so I've known these people for a long time, and when they announced the creation of a Singularity University in 2008, I wrote to them and I said, I want to be part of this. I want to be part of a Singularity University. And so I joined as one of the founding faculty in 2009. And the two founders, again, are these two MIT friends, Ray Kurzweil and Peter Diamandis. I am part of the founding faculty, the founding professors, and at the time I was teaching energy and environmental systems. I was working on renewable energy, mostly solar energy, wind energy, nuclear fusion, not fission, but fusion nuclear energy, electric cars, space-based solar power, all these incredible things that are happening now, and that are also increasing exponentially. You know, solar energy today is increasing exponentially. In the next 20 years, basically, all of the fossil fuels will remain fossil. We will not be using fossil fuels anymore. We don't need coal, we don't need oil, we don't need natural gas. We have over almost 10,000 times more solar energy than we use as a civilization. 10,000 times more solar energy. What does it mean? That if we learn how to take or to use 1% of the solar energy we receive, we have enough energy for all of humanity. So this is what I was teaching at Singularity University in the year 2009 and for the first 5 years. And then I was learning about what was happening in medicine, what was happening in biology, and I love this. So I got involved also on the exponential advances of all technologies that are digitized, remaining not just related to computers, but also energy itself is being digitized, and now medicine is being digitized. So I made a change from energy into biology at that time, also for two other reasons. One is that the Nobel Prize in Medicine was awarded in 2012 to two scientists, including the Japanese biologist Shinya Yamanaka. Shinya Yamanaka discovered that aging actually can be reversed, and he got the Nobel Prize because he identified 4 genes on the skin of mice, actually on the cells of any mammal, that you can modify those 4 genes and change the biological age. To me, that was absolutely mind-blowing. Now it makes sense, but at that time, in 2012, it was hard to understand. Let me explain why now it is so logical. Because we have the human genome, or the genome of the mouse, or the genome of a dog. Anyway, the human genome is the same since you are born until you die. So if the genome is the same, why were you younger before and then you are older later? And the reason is that besides the genes and the genome, there is the epigenome above the genome, which means that some genes can be modified and they change through time. And that is why you age, or we age, because the epigenome changes. And therefore, even though the genome remains, the epigenome changes. And now we can reverse that epigenome. We can modify the epigenome to have a young age. Well, to me, That was mind-blowing, and now it's very logical. And I think actually everybody should know this, and almost no one knows it, that the Nobel Prize in Medicine in the year 2012 was given to a Japanese scientist who discovered that aging is flexible and that you can accelerate aging. I don't recommend that. You can stop aging, or more interesting, you can reverse aging. So that was to me absolutely revolutionary. And the final point why I moved into anti-aging is because sadly my father died, and when you have someone that you love, that you admire, that dies, it makes you reconsider everything in your life. And so I even changed countries when my father died. I left California and I moved to Spain, and I have remained in Spain, and I have made my life mission to kill aging. That is my goal in life, to kill aging, because aging is killing us. So we need to go faster than aging and kill aging before aging kills us. And I repeat, we know today scientifically that that is possible. Nobel Prize in Medicine in 2012 to Shinya Yamanaka.
There's so many questions I got there, but I don't know which one.
Begin?
I mean, just to rewind your interest in energy, right? And you made a point that I think is overlooked, and that is sometimes you see the forecasts about how much fossil fuel we will burn and all the effects of that and so on. But that seems to presuppose that there is not a kind of exponential development of, for example, solar energy, for example. So, and it seems like a bet that might be wrong.
Yeah, and fusion as well. Sorry, Jose. I just wanted to mention fusion as well. I mean, it's another type of solar energy, but still.
Absolutely, and that is why I'm interested also personally in nuclear fusion. And there is one MIT company that hopes to have nuclear fusion in 3 years. 3 years. And there are people like Bill Gates investing in these companies. Also, Ray Kurzweil talks about that in his book, The Singularity is Nearer, and he talks how energy is advancing exponentially. I had the pleasure to review the book and to make him some comments and some suggestions in the energy area, which is my former expertise. But yes, this is moving exponentially. And let me tell you something really incredible. Just a few days ago, I read an article that China has already reached peak oil. Now there are so many electric cars in China. In fact, very soon, half of the new cars in China will be electric. So forget about gasoline, forget about diesel, forget about natural gas. It's going to be electric. Transportation will be electric. And so, a few days back, China has reached peak oil. And now oil consumption in China will probably begin decreasing. Another thing that happened in China last year is that they reached peak China, peak population, which is a tragedy, not just for China, for the whole planet. We are reaching a peak, a plateau, and maybe a decline in population. So as of last year, the population of China began declining. And to show you how serious this is, China now every year is losing one Sweden, plus or minus. One Sweden disappears every year from China's population. One Sweden less, 2, 3, 4 Swedens. The population of China is beginning to decline.
And this is also, you could tie this to your recent trip to Saudi Arabia, I guess, because they have understood that they need to diversify, and longevity biotech and biotech in general might be one of those tracks that they could pursue, I guess.
Absolutely. Saudi Arabia has now a plan for the year 2030 where they want to be a renewable society. And that is why they are building this city, the line, Neom, that is not going to be using petroleum, okay? Or the same in the United Arab Emirates, where they have one city outside Abu Dhabi, which is called Masdar City, which is using renewable energy. So yes, they are moving away because they know that the future is renewable, which is renewable, by the way, as opposed to fossil fuels that will remain fossil.
For the time being, though, a lot of this, the reason that it's peak oil is that they've invested a lot in nuclear power, just like India and Russia, right?
Well, and also because of electric cars. As I mentioned, almost very soon half of the new cars will be electric in China, and electric cars don't use gasoline.
I mean, another positive effect of this transition that we can foresee is that we don't have to go to war over these kind of resources.
Absolutely. You know, this is something I like to say, that immortality will make us more sustainable and more peaceful. More peaceful. Why? Well, sustainable because we will be here to suffer the future if we do it badly. And because we want a good future, we will be more careful about sustainability. So it's good for the ecology that we become immortal. Very good. Second, because we are going to be here and our enemies or possible enemies are also going to be here, we need to be more tolerant. We need to be more peaceful. And actually, humanity has become incredibly peaceful throughout history. Again, 20,000 years ago, we mostly killed each other for food, for water, for partners. This was normal. War was the normal human standard. So Steve Pinker actually talks about this, how peaceful we are today. We are incredibly peaceful. In fact, we only have to go back last century when we had World War I, World War II, that killed millions and millions of people. So today, we have never been so peaceful as we are today, and we will be more peaceful now that we are more longevous, and we will be cleaner. We want a clean environment, and we want a peaceful society.
Yeah, I mean, it looks like also since we are more connected and interdependent, it's just not worth killing the other. It's better to exchange peacefully with him or her.
Absolutely. So there are many positive things about longevity, and those are two that people don't realize: being more tolerant and being more ecological or more cleaner and sustainable in our thinking, in our ways. And also, we will be here to colonize Mars and the moon. This is so exciting. You know, in the next decade, we will have a moon colony, we will have a Mars colony, and it will be peaceful. And it will also let us try different ways to administer a society. These will be new societies with new rules, and we will learn from that to have experiments in how governance should evolve into the future.
This episode of Levity is brought to you by Vitalism Foundation.
Vitalism Foundation is a non-profit with a revolutionary mission to achieve unlimited lifespans in peak health.
You should really join us. Follow the link in the description below.
It's really quite something one should perhaps stop and let sink in, that you are actually saying that if we can make it to 2040 or thereabouts, then we could live indefinitely long lives.
Absolutely. That's number one, longevity escape velocity, that hopefully could happen as early as 2030 to keep on living longer and longer until 2045, when we expect to be able to rejuvenate people biologically. Biological rejuvenation is the goal. And so many things are happening. Another thing that I am so happy about this, since I joined the longevity field, the anti-aging movement, over 10 years ago when I was at Singularity University, this has been exploding. Actually, I went to one of the first longevity conferences organized by Aubrey de Grey. He began about 20 years ago organizing conferences in Cambridge University. He called his conference Sense Conference. Sense is his methodology of aging. And there was only one conference. That conference started by Aubrey de Grey. Now there are dozens of conferences all over the planet. There are many hundreds of scientists. There is a lot of research. There is a lot of money. Like I mentioned, even Saudi Arabia created Evolution Foundation with $20 billion. This was totally unexpected, you know, that suddenly out of Saudi Arabia, $20 billion and the biggest prize in history, $101 million coming out of from Saudi Arabia, because also the USA is a big investor, Japan, because Shinya Yamanaka lives in Japan, or wealthy people like Jeff Bezos. Jeff Bezos, Yuri Milner from Russia and Israel and the USA also, they created Altos Labs. Altos Labs, because it began in Los Altos, California, in Silicon Valley. And Altos Labs began with $3 billion to rejuvenate also. The goal of Altos Labs is biological rejuvenation. Also, some years earlier, Calico, California Life Company out of Google, also has the same goal, also $3 billion. There are many companies started. Also, Sam Altman, that everybody knows from OpenAI. Well, he also invested close to $200 million in a company working on rejuvenation. So many people are realizing that we are very close. So many conferences, including one I organized in Spain. So I want to invite you to Spain, where we have International Longevity Summit in Spain, October 1 and 2, 1st and 2nd of October. And then we have also tours. If you want to see something really beautiful, UNESCO World Heritage Sites, come to Spain. Beautiful country with the longest life expectancy in the European Union. I have to make this plug because it is real. According to Eurostat, you know, the European Statistical Agency, Spain has the longest life expectancy of the European Union, and Madrid has the longest life expectancy of any European capital. In fact, life expectancy in Madrid, which is right now 85.2 years at birth, it's higher than in the supposedly blue zones of Icaria in Greece, Sardinia in Italy, even outside like Okinawa in Japan, or Loma Linda in California, or Nicoya Peninsula in Costa Rica. Those places have lower life expectancy than Madrid. So forget about those old blue zones. Now we have the new blue zones, and we are going to declare Madrid as the first or blue zone 2.0 or 3.0. And we have a campaign to stop aging. In Spanish is Stop Envejecimiento. Stop Envejecimiento. We have a rally throughout Madrid. We go to the City Hall of Madrid. We go to the Congress of Spain. And we go to the European Parliament to tell people that we need to stop aging. That was part of my campaign also to the European Parliament, the creation of the European Anti-Aging Agency. So yes, stop aging, come to Madrid, see why we have the longest life expectancy of all of the European Union and bigger than the blue zones.
Preaching the gospel there.
Many things. But yes.
No, seriously, why do you think, do we have any causes for why Spain is the longest living people in Europe?
Not in the world, because it is indeed true that Japan has just a little bit higher life expectancy than Spain, and some city-states, you know, like Singapore, Monaco, have longer life expectancies. And of course, the Vatican, because people are already immortal in the Vatican. So yeah, there are a few places outside the European Union with higher life expectancies. But to ask about the causes, the reasons, I do like some of the points that are mentioned about blue zones. What do blue zones have in common? Mostly a healthy Mediterranean diet. You see that in Sardinia in Italy, Icaria in Greece, also in Okinawa in Japan. They also have a Mediterranean diet equivalent, even if they are very far away from the Mediterranean, or in Nicoya in Costa Rica or Loma Linda in California. They do have more or less a very rich in vegetables, in fruits, good olive oil or similar. So that is number one, the food, because we are what we eat. If we eat junk food, we are going to be junk people and we will die sooner. So food, important, very important. Also, family relations. In Spain and in Italy, which is just behind Spain, you can see, or in Greece, which is also kind of a Mediterranean country, we have very good family relations, social activism, which is important. Another thing is more or less some exercise. People keep on walking, doing exercise, going to the market into their 80s, 90s, even 100s. So physical exercise is important. Again, so all those considerations, the sense of community, the sense of family, the food we eat, the exercise, many things that we see in blue zones are true in Madrid. On top of that, a top medical system that there is in Madrid. But again, I want to go beyond that. I don't think we should be living elderly people like in the blue zones, which is a good beginning, of course. If you are given the choice to live 100, 110, or even 120 years, even if old, I think we should take it until we have biological rejuvenation, because that is the goal. The goal is not to live indefinitely old. No one wants that. Even in the blue zones or in Madrid, no one wants to live indefinitely old. So the goal is to live indefinitely young, and that is why Shinya Yamanaka got the Nobel Prize, because he discovered that it is possible to reverse aging.
Yeah, can I ask you, Jose? I mean, right now it's getting easier to see that we could reach artificial general intelligence by 2030. It almost seems conservative estimate by now. I do wonder, though, reaching longevity escape velocity by that same year. It seems like in biology, even if we were to discover some very important and potent drug today, we still had to test it, and testing a drug takes a long time. So, I mean, what makes you think that we can make it to 2030, which I guess most neuroscientists would say is widely optimistic?
Yes. Well, first of all, this is not medicine. This is really more bioengineering, which is a totally different field. And it is improving exponentially. Well, first of all, as my friend Ray Kurzweil explains, now medicine, biology has been digitized. That is why it is advancing so fast. A few days ago, I saw an interview with Dennis Hassabis, who is the co-founder of DeepMind that was acquired by Google, and he got the Nobel Prize in medicine.
Chemistry.
It was in chemistry for AlphaFold. AlphaFold was this program that was able to know how proteins fold, the folding problem. This was a problem that scientists said it would take centuries before we would be able to know how proteins fold. And the AlphaFold was able to do it in a few months. All the proteins known to humanity. Anyway, so Denis Hassabis was saying that he has a very personal interest in biology, and that what DeepMind is doing now is to understand how life works, even at the cellular level. So moving from proteins to cells to organs to full organisms. And he believes that this is possible in 5 years. This is incredible. Winner of the Nobel Prize in Chemistry. This scientist, Denis Hassabis from DeepMind, acquired by Google. So he has said that. And some other scientists that artificial intelligence is moving so fast that it will help us to solve the aging problem. Also, as I mentioned, the human genome is only 3 gigabytes of data. 3 gigabytes. This is 1 terabyte. So 3 gigabytes is caca. Caca. For a computer today is caca. You know, big data doesn't work on gigabytes. It works on terabytes and much more. Exabytes, petabytes, big numbers. So forget about caca. We're just biologically caca. Very simple. I'll tell you two more things which are quite interesting to consider. One is cancer. Cancer actually are cells that mutate and stop aging. Cancer cells become immortal cells because they don't want to die. They want to keep on growing and reproducing, and they stop aging, which is quite incredible. Quite incredible that these cells discovered immortality. And cancer happens in every part of the body, in every person, continuously. Actually, we have cancer since we are born, but our bodies are so strong when we are age 5, 10, 20, that our immune system kills cancer cells. Then when we begin aging, our immune system becomes weaker, and cancer can sometimes win the battle against our immune system, and then we develop tumors, and then we die. But again, cancer is fascinating because cancer discovered immortality. In fact, the famous HeLa cells, named after Henrietta Lacks, who was a patient who died in 1951, you know, over 70 years ago. Her cells are alive. She died of cancer, but her cells, which are immortal, and those were the first immortal cells discovered, they are alive. Why am I saying this and emphasizing so much? And also, I explain all of this in chapter 2 of The Death of Death. So you need to read The Death of Death also, because we are donating all the royalties to research into foundations, one in Spain and one in California. So when you buy The Death of Death, you will not die, guaranteed. Yes, this is what my friends say, guaranteed or your money back. Not many dead people have come back for money, for 20 euros. But anyway, no, the point is I explained this in The Death of Death. And again, we are donating the money. So I'm not making money of this, even though I should, because it's a mega bestseller throughout the planet in many languages. But anyway, cancer, chapter 2 of the book. Cancer discovered immortality. Cancer didn't go to university and discover immortality. Cancer doesn't know how to read and discover immortality. Cancer didn't spend millions of dollars and discovered immortality. Why am I saying this? Because we have gone to university, we are spending millions and millions of dollars, and we are very close. We are, I would say, 5 years away from curing all cancers. Because now that we have sequenced the human genome, we can identify the mutations that make cancer cells immortal. This is not magic. And I repeat, cancer discovered this a long time ago without going to university. So we are going to cure cancer. We are very close to cure cancer and to understand more about immortality, because cancer discovered immortality, and also there are other immortal cells, not just cancer, because you could say cancer is bad. But the best cells in our bodies, which are the germ cells, the reproductive cells, germ cells also do not age, and they are called biologically immortal. multicellular organisms, not only humans or mammals, all multicellular organisms have two types of cells. Germ cells for reproduction that do not age, and somatic cells, soma, body in Greek, somatic cells that age. So somatic cells age. And obviously the body is somatic, 99.9%. So when the body ages and dies, the germ cells inside that do not age also die. Like cancer cells. Cancer cells die when the body dies because there is no more food. There is no more environment for cancer cells to survive in the body. And the same with germ cells. But anyway, not only cancer cells discover immortality, germ cells are born immortal. Germ cells are born immortal. So we need to understand also why germ cells are immortal. And one more thing, there are also some small organisms that we know that are biologically immortal. Probably you have heard about the immortal jellyfish. This is fantastic. There are some jellyfish that are immortal. And now scientists are discovering the difference between jellyfish that age and jellyfish that don't age. We also have other animals that don't age, like hydras, and we have also some animals that don't age, that keep on growing, like lobsters. Lobsters show no sign of aging. And they keep on growing, and that is actually the problem. They keep on growing, until someone eats the lobster. Or when the lobster changes her cover, to put it that way, when it changes it, it becomes vulnerable to a virus or to an animal to bite it, and then it dies. But lobsters don't show signs of aging. And again, some fish are being discovered to do the same, to keep on growing and not age. And talking about sea life, because life in the sea, which was the first life forms in the planet, many do not seem to age or live very long, like sharks. Greenland sharks, the sharks in Greenland, live 5 centuries. 5 centuries. Whales, which are bowhead whales, which are mammals, very important mammals, in the sea, live 200 years. 200 years. Why do we live 100 years or less when whales live 200 years? Or also, there are some mice, some shrews, some mice that live 2 years. One mammal that lives 2 years, and one mammal, a whale that lives 200 years. We are in the middle, let's say 100 years. So why we have mammals of 2 years, some mice, and whales of 200 years? Well, now biology is telling us the sequence of the human genome. We are understanding which are the genes related to longevity, and why some mammals live 2 years and some live 200 years, or outside the mammals, I repeat, we have sharks, 500 years, we have clams, 500 years. We have also trees. We have trees of millennia, thousands and thousands of years. So why do trees live thousands and thousands of years? So anyway, we are discovering the biological basis of aging. We live in an incredible time, exponential time, now that we understand the 3 gigabytes of data that makes us us.
I actually think quite a lot these days about the timeline we're on and how incredible it is. I can't believe it. It's just so, the coincidence of me being born and living through these years is just mind-blowing.
Yes, let me tell you a bit more about AI, because artificial intelligence will make us understand our 3 gigabytes of data, caca data, we are caca data, and also the relationships between genes, also why some species don't age, why some cells do not age, why there is already biological immortality, which I tell many people, we don't need to create immortality. Biology already did it for us. In fact, the first life forms in the planet, which were small bacteria with circular chromosomes, are biologically immortal. Those first bacteria with circular chromosomes with no beginning and no end to the chromosome, therefore they don't have the closing end parts of the chromosomes that we call telomeres, which is important. Cancer actually grows their telomeres continuously. That is why they don't age. Cancer cells don't age. Anyway, the first bacteria 4 billion years ago, they were biologically immortal. Life evolved to live, not to die. It is stupid to say that death gives meaning to life. This is stupid. Life appeared because life is good, and life wanted to be immortal. It is true that death appeared with multicellular organisms because, I repeat, somatic cells do age. Germ cells do not age. Germ cells are biologically immortal. Anyway, going back to AI, AI is going to help us with that in 5 years, as Dennis Hasabi has said from DeepMind. So I am really optimistic. And again, my friend, I have to repeat it again, Ray Kurzweil, and I explain in the appendix of my book, there is an appendix until the year 2099. 2099, the end of this century, that you have to read. It's really beautiful. I talk what will happen in the planet until the year 2099. So,
what's happening in 2099?
Is the end of this century.
Thank you.
Wow.
Thank you, Jose.
Wow.
That was very illuminating.
Yeah, no, there is more, but you have to read the
Yeah,
book again so that you don't die. No, one more thing about AI. Also I talk about the chemical composition of our bodies. We are mostly water, and people don't realize it. We are like 2/3 water, and we are tap water. Tap water. We are not Evian or Perrier water from France or from Switzerland. No. We are tap water, okay? That is 2/3 of us. What is the other third of us? The most common and abundant elements in the planet. We are not made of gold and platinum. No. We are made of water, that is oxygen and hydrogen, with a base of carbon. We are organic matter, carbon based. And then we have nitrogen, we have calcium, we have potassium, we have sodium. We basically are 8 elements. 8 elements. 99% of us, 8 elements. And again, 2/3 water. I like to say we are water bags. We are a bag of water. In fact, dirty water. We are dirty water, not Perrier water. We are dirty water. That is what we are. And when we understand this in physical principles, in first principles, we will be able to replicate this. And because we are so cheap, actually we don't cost 100 euros in raw materials. You don't cost 100 euros. I don't cost 100 euros. Again, we are bags of dirty water. That is what we are. We don't cost 100 euros. And now that we understand the biological base and the chemical base of life, something as cheap as we are, less than 100 euro, will be able to keep indefinitely for 10 euros per year. This is my forecast. To become immortal will cost 10 euros.
It's a nice example of, as you say, first principle thinking that give perhaps counterintuitive outcome for people who don't think like that. So if you combine that with exponentiality or progress, then you end up with prognosis that are not so common.
Yes, so remember, Patrick, and you, Peter, you don't cost 100 euros. You are very cheap to make. You are so cheap to make that your parents made you in one night, probably, without spending 100 euros.
But listen, so you think that like 2030, it is like advanced bioengineering that is going to happen, basically?
Yes. It's basically bioengineering. Those are the words. And that is also why there is a problem with medicine, because there is a disruption. And the disruption comes always from outside. The electric cars didn't come from the car companies. They came from outside, from Elon Musk and other people. The disruption now in the pharmaceutical industry is not coming from inside. It's coming from outside. As I said, Dennis Hasabi, he got the Nobel Prize in chemistry. He didn't study chemistry. or the Nobel Prize in physics also to Jeff Hinton. You know, he is not a physicist, and he got the Nobel Prize because of his work on artificial intelligence and neural networks and the application to physics. So there is a disruption in medicine, and it is actually bioengineering.
Yeah, I wouldn't actually bet against Demis Hassabis and Google DeepMind. I think so. They have spun out this company, Isomorphic Labs, and they are now trying to achieve this virtual simulated cell. And I bet we could probably count on them doing that faster as well, just as they did AlphaFold much faster than structural biologists would have predicted, right? And I think when I think about that angle, that way forward, I think that timelines are shrinking for me as well when it comes to longevity, escape velocity, and that's also why I am optimistic. Maybe not 2030, but probably fair chance in the 2030s.
One more thing, Mark Zuckerberg, co-founder of Facebook, and his wife, Priscilla Chan, who is a medical doctor who studied biology at Harvard University, where they met, Mark and Priscilla. They created a foundation over a decade ago when their first child was born. Her child is Maxima, and they said that their daughter would not die of aging. She might die of a broken heart, of a love story, but she will not die of aging. Why? Because we are going to cure aging, and they are putting 99% of their fortune into the Chan Zuckerberg Foundation to cure all diseases. They said that's the goal, to cure all diseases in this generation, not the next generation, in this generation. And that Max, their daughter, will not die of aging. And also in this foundation, the Chan Zuckerberg Foundation, they are studying cells. They want to be able to do artificial cells. They are replicating how biology works at the artificial intelligence level. So it is not just DeepMind, it is also Mark Zuckerberg and many other groups. The Chinese also, I find it incredible. And some Japanese scientists are working on all of this. I love this competition. This is positive competition, like the X Prize for longevity in 2030. I repeat, 600 teams from all over the world. It's incredible, including 5 teams from Spain. It could be more, but anyway, so far 5 teams from Spain. In all areas, I repeat, all kind of teams, startups, universities, big pharma, family offices, single scientists, crazy people, lunatics and Martians competing to cure aging. It is fantastic. We will see so much innovation in the next 5 years to December 2030. That is incredible.
I love a concept. I think you it's your concept. Rejuveneering, is that your term? And I have a question. So Zuckerberg, he doesn't come out very much about rejuveneering.
Mark Zuckerberg. Yes, of course. That is the goal of the Chan Zuckerberg Foundation, and they said it. The goal is written by them to cure all diseases in this generation. Actually, I think Jeff Bezos, we know Amazon. With Yuri Milner and others, they created Altos Labs, $3 billion. The Google guys, Sergey Brin and Larry Page, also Calico, California Life Company, also $3 billion. Mark Zuckerberg and his wife Priscilla Chan, their foundation, also billions of dollars, more than $3 billion into this. Also now Apple, Tim Cook, the CEO of Apple, has said that Apple will be remembered in the future by what they will do in health. This is incredible. So most wealthy people, Sam Altman, as I said, also Armstrong from Coinbase also has invested, I think, $100 million in anti-aging. The only one who has not yet done so in anti-aging is among the wealthy people is I would say Elon Musk and also Bill Gates. But Bill Gates is interested in Alzheimer because his father sadly suffering from Alzheimer. And I think Elon Musk is because he's still young. He doesn't feel that he's aging yet, or not that much. But when he begins feeling the aging process and how he's losing his capabilities, all the way from his mental capabilities, he will put money into longevity. I'm totally convinced. So we are also 5 to 10 years away from Elon Musk realizing that going to Mars is fantastic, connecting the whole planet through a Starlink is fantastic, that neural link to connect our brains to the cloud is fantastic, but it is even more fantastic to cure aging. That is the most fantastic thing that we can all do, and that Elon Musk will also realize in 5 to 10 years.
Well, these things fit together. I mean, if we're going to Mars, we need time, for sure. So some of the people you mentioned were, of course, in the White House recently, and in the Oval Office we saw Altman, and we saw also Ellison. And so what do you think about the new administration?
Yes, actually, Larry Ellison from Oracle, he's also very interested in longevity. He has funded a lot of research, millions of dollars into longevity research. And what Larry Ellison did with Sam Altman from OpenAI and the Japanese founder of SoftBank, they announced Stargate, which is the biggest single AI investment for a data center, $500 billion. The number they use is 500 billion. I prefer to say $500 billion. We are moving now into the trillions of dollars on AI. And again, I repeat, two of the guys in Stargate are Larry from Oracle and Sam Altman from OpenAI. So these guys are interested into longevity. There is a lot of influence, as we know. Robert Fisher Kennedy Jr., who is now Secretary of Health and Human Services in the USA, is interested in longevity. I have been with him a couple of times. He seems very, sincerely committed to this. Also to the horrible things and corruption that there has been before. For example, with Alzheimer's. Alzheimer's has been a disaster. I think the number is like $20 billion of money wrongly used because of this failed theory of beta, what is it called? Yeah, beta amyloids. You know, this has been a fake theory that has taken over $20 billion of money, and it's not the cause or anything related to Alzheimer's, at least for curing it. So anyway, I think this is important. He has a new mentality, a new view. His second in command, Jim O'Neill, also he was on the SENS Research Foundation. And the goal of the SENS Research Foundation was obviously to cure aging. So I think many interesting people in the new US administration, and also the new head of the FDA, the Food and Drug Administration. The new administrator actually has also a very open-minded person, and he is interested in longevity. So many interesting things are happening. And again, not just in the USA. I think that in Japan, they are very committed to this. And because Shinya Yamanaka was the Japanese biologist who got the Nobel Prize in Medicine, and he's working on biological rejuvenation. Right now, rejuvenating eyes of monkeys. After he got the Nobel Prize for rejuvenating skin cell, the cell of a skin of a mouse, now they are rejuvenating the eyes of monkeys with the goal of rejuvenating the eyes of humans in 5 years. So Japan is very interested. Also, Japan is opening all the clinical trials for people in old age That means if you are 80 and you want to try any experimental therapy, you are free to do it. That is best choice medicine open to the public. I think this is fantastic. Europe should do something like that. And again, I'm pushing for the European Anti-Aging Agency in a way similar to the US National Institute on Aging, which is very tiny. The National Institute on Aging is a very, very tiny part of the National Institutes of Health of the USA. So this has to grow. And I love competition. I love international competition. I love to see what Japan is doing. I love to see what the USA is doing. I love to see what Great Britain is doing, what Germany is doing. Some countries are moving into this direction. And also now China, because as I mentioned, China's population has begun declining. And this is a horrible thing for China. You know, also because now India overtook China in terms of population. So there is not only population competition, there is competition in everything. And now China is investing on anti-aging. And again, I repeat, that is why I am so proud. The Chinese government has published my book. This is the Chinese government. That's good. That's big.
It sure is. So
I'm thinking about the population decline. That's when we spoke about Elon Musk. I mean, he's very worried about population decline. So he should be interested for that reason as well to actually solve aging.
it's like he has all the bits, and I think they will come together at some point.
Absolutely.
And I hope it's not too long. Can I just ask, because his good friend, RFK, right? When you talk to RFK, has he read your book? Have you pitched this idea to him? How much does he know?
He knows, not so much because of me, even though obviously I mentioned this. In fact, we went together, this is quite funny, about 2 years ago, to the home of Elvis Presley in Memphis, Tennessee. We had a conference there, and he had all kind of security because he was already, actually, he was a presidential candidate. He had not joined Donald Trump yet, so he had a lot of security. But anyway, going to the mansion of Elvis Presley in Memphis, Tennessee was an experience and a way to contact him and talk about this. But much better than me, someone that is working with him is Jim O'Neill. And again, also the administrator of the FDA. So yeah, many things are happening. I try to be always optimistic and look at the glass being half full, not half empty. No. The glass is half full, and we are going to fill it up.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very curious to see how the very positive meme that we're trying to get out in the world, how far it reaches up.
Absolutely. So we need to be campaigning. Also, like Patrick, with your book, I think it's a fantastic book. The Case Against Aging. Everybody.
Case Against Death.
Against death, yeah. The Case Against Death. Everybody should read this. Should understand that this is the best position, philosophical position. We need to cure aging. We need to cure, forget about cancer and Alzheimer's and heart attacks. Of course, we need to cure all of those. But if we cure aging, they are solved.
So your political campaign, tell us a little bit about that.
Well, I have not been successful. I got about 7,000 votes, but that's not bad. I don't know 7,000 people in Madrid. But to be elected to the European Parliament, it takes about 250,000 votes. So still a lot of room for improvement. The next election is in 4 years. The European election is every 5 years. I'm not interested in local politics, even though I am pushing for Madrid to become a blue zone, because it deserves it much more than Sardinia or Icaria or Okinawa. Madrid deserves it, according to the statistics from Eurostat in Europe. So I think also if I manage to convince people from the right and from the left, I can have more impact. So right now, after my failed attempt to join the European Parliament and to create the European Anti-Aging Agency, which should be a priority because Europe has about 30 agencies. Half of them are totally useless today, you know? Those agencies, they are from, you know, after World War II, when the world was different. And even now, you know, almost half of the budget of the European Union goes into agricultural subsidies. Well, maybe now it's only 40%, but at some time it was incredible. 60% of the budget into agricultural subsidies. Horrible, horrible. When we are not farmers anymore, I repeat. So we need to move into aging, which is the new priority. Anyway, so going back to politics, there are some other parties in Germany, or some parties who are interested very much in longevity, also in Italy, and a new foundation, the Ion Foundation in Italy, created by some politicians that were members of the Congress, the Parliament of Italy, also some groups in Belgium and in France. But my position now, let's see, in 4 years, is that I want to influence all parties, because this is a problem of everybody. People from the right, people from the left, people from the top, people from the bottom. We are all dying. This is common. So maybe we can manage to convince more and more people. But anyway, we still have 4 more years before the next European election.
If we're reaching longevity escape velocity in about that time, is this a case of you hoping for the best but preparing for the worst, with your passion and drive to elicit change and to get more people on board on this? Because that's one way of thinking about it, but another way is just sitting back and waiting for the miracle to happen, right? How do you view that?
Yeah, we should not sit down and wait, because every day, 110,000 people die of aging. 110,000 people. It's an incredible amount. It's over 50 million people, around maybe 55 million people die every year of aging. This is horrible. This is the biggest massacre in the planet. This is the biggest war. There has been no war with so many people dying continuously, day after day. It's a tragedy. It's a human tragedy. So yes, for that reason, I don't want to wait until the next European election. And locally in Madrid, I think I can do a lot convincing both major parties. So I am trying, I'm pushing in every single direction. Also, I'm contributing with scientific research, with public communication, political discourse, international and national appearances. Again, my book, even published by the government of China. So I am trying every single door. I am knocking on all doors, because I hope one door will open. And once it is open, it is unstoppable. It is unstoppable. And so we need to accelerate this, because we cannot wait. This could happen faster, you know, like passing the Alan Turing test. The Alan Turing test, according to my friend, Ray Kurzweil, is going to be passed by 2029. But I think it's going to happen now faster. It is going to happen faster. DeepMind is accelerating it. Denis Hassabis is accelerating it. And again, not only him, there is so much competition on AI. The Chinese came in. It's fantastic. China came in. DeepSeek and R1, you know, do everything that OpenAI for 1% of the cost, or whatever, 5% I think is the number. But it doesn't matter. There is so much happening, and we need to accelerate it in every possible way. So I know Peter and Patrick, you are doing also all you can do in different fronts, by what you write, by what you communicate, by the exchanges you have. And we need to get more and more people into this train. This is the train to the future. And we don't want to miss the train, because I like to say we are between the last mortal generation and the first immortal generation. We should not miss that train to immortality, but not just for us, for our loved people, for our parents, for our friends, for everybody, because again, even for our enemies, because we will be more peaceful and more tolerant the longer we live. So I even wish for longevity for my enemies, that I don't plan to have many enemies or none at all in the future, and I want them to become immortal too.
To support your point here about how important it is to push this process forward faster, is that when you have older parents or grandparents, then a year can make the whole difference. Oh, 6 months can make the whole difference, right? So it's nothing to be passive about.
Absolutely, absolutely. Unfortunately, you know, I think that for people who are in their 80s, under 90s, under 100s, they will not make it, sadly, because even if we reach longevity escape velocity by 2030, you need to be in good medical condition so that in the future you can be rejuvenated. So for these people, actually, I believe in plan B. Plan A is immortality through biological rejuvenation. And plan B is biostasis, sometimes called cryonics, human cryopreservation, or there are other ways of keeping the body or the brain. This will be needed by people in their 80s and their 90s, like my mother. My mother, sadly, I don't think she will make it to longevity escape velocity. She's going to be 94. And statistically, it's going to be difficult for people in that age to reach longevity escape velocity and to be able to rejuvenate fast enough in the 2030s. But like my former professor at MIT that I mentioned, Marvin Minsky, one of the three founders of the idea of artificial intelligence. Marvin Minsky died in 2016, and now he's cryonically suspended in the Alcor Life Extension Foundation in Scottsdale, Arizona. Again, this is plan B. I think most people will be able to reach plan A if we make it alive into the 2030s, because that will make us live long enough to live forever, because we will have biological rejuvenation. Even my dear friend Ray Kurzweil, who just turned 77 on February 12th, which by the way is also the birthday of Isaac Newton. I think it's Isaac Newton, yes, February 12th, you can check it. It's the birthday of Ray Kurzweil. I sent him a message, happy birthday, February 12th. And he plans to make it. And he just turned 77. So, you know, even if you are in your 70s, you might make it. He plans to make it alive. But he's also a member of Alcor Life Extension Foundation, to be cryonically suspended if anything happens to him before reaching longevity escape velocity, because accidents happen. You know, people will still die tomorrow of an accident, you know, so we need to be careful. I don't want to die because of aging, but also I don't want to die because of an accident.
When we show props here, I can show my bracelet. This is Tomorrow Bio's cryonic membership bracelet.
Fantastic. Let me tell you, last year, 2024, we had 3 Spanish patients who are now in Tomorrow Bio cryonics facility north of Zurich, Switzerland. So 3 Spanish patients last year in Tomorrow Bio, and we are very proud of that, because cryonics is like an ambulance into the future. Is time medicine. What medicine cannot do today to cure, medicine of the future will be able. So cryonics is an ambulance from the present to the future.
There were so many interesting things in your book. Also when you and David Wood, when you describe the psychology of people's resistance, I thought was very good. That it's like a paradox that on the one hand, we have as humans built these ideological edifices to protect ourselves from the terror of death. On the other hand, when somebody says, here is a scientific way to achieve longevity, people no, they don't want it because it reminds them of death or something like that. It's a very, very nice chapter.
Yeah, the Stockholm syndrome.
Yeah.
You know, we had made peace with aging and death, and no, we have to stop peace. No peace, total war. Like we had war on cancer. But we did not have the technology. You know, when the war on cancer began, in the 1960s and 70s, we did not have the technology that we have today. So now we should have not only the war on cancer, we need to have a global, unlimited, unstoppable, planetary war on aging. This is what we need. This will unite Russians and Ukrainians, Palestinians and Jews, Europeans and Chinese and Japanese and Indians and Spanish and Germans and Americans and Brazilians. This is what will unify the whole planet, more than an invasion from Mars.
Much more positive, definitely.
Again, I'm on my campaign now, Stop Envejecimiento, Stop Aging. All of you are invited to Spain. And I am traveling all the time. Next month, I will be in 3 Latin American countries for different reasons. 4, actually. I'm going to go to Mexico and Argentina from the top to the bottom, and then also El Salvador and Venezuela. So pushing for these ideas with different publics, with different groups, also with politicians. I'm going to meet with the president of El Salvador, who is very disruptive, Nayib Bukele, and also with the president of Argentina, my dear friend Javier Milei, who is even more disruptive. So maybe one of these 2 presidents will be able to help us to push this disruptive agenda about longevity, to cure aging. So those are part of my trips. And then, of course, all the longevity conferences, not just Eureka conference in Stuttgart. I will also go to the biggest one in the USA, which is called RAD Fest, Revolution Against Aging and Death, that will be in Las Vegas. And then I plan to go to the Dublin, Longevity Summit Dublin as well, to the conference in Copenhagen. We were together there, Patrick. ARDD, Aging Research and Drug Discovery. This is a top conference, one of my favorite conferences in the world, in Copenhagen. And many other conferences. There is another one later as well in South America, and in Portugal, in the Baltics, in Israel, many conferences. Again, this is an exploding field.
Do you sing karaoke at every conference?
Well, in Copenhagen, we sang a lot of karaoke, actually.
Yeah, maybe some context for the listeners and viewers. You sent the text to Patrick quite late one night, asking him, when do you come to the karaoke, if I remember correctly.
Oh, yeah.
Yes, that's fantastic. And, there are some songs which are very appropriate for longevity, like Viva la Vida. Many songs. So... yes, we need to make this fun. I mean, if we want to live, it's because life is beautiful. Life is fantastic. There are so many opportunities, so many things to do, so many things to learn, so many things to share. That is why I want to be alive. I want to learn Swedish. Yes, Swedish. And maybe Icelandic, as Patrick mentioned.
Yeah, it'll be worth it if you live long enough, that's for sure. So to leave the listeners and the viewers with 3 books they have to read.
You can't say Death of Death.
No?
No,
Okay.
no, 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 no.
How about different
Death
languages?
in 12 languages, and there we go, finished.
Yes. Okay. Well, I mentioned also The Case Against Death by Patrick Linden. I don't know if you know the person. But one book I also like about aging is by this British scientist, Andrew Steele. His book is called Ageless. I think Ageless is a very powerful book. Almost as good as The Death of Death. So I do recommend it. For people interested also into artificial intelligence related things, I believe Ray Kurzweil is the genius in all of this. So the singularity is nearer, is a good one. And of course, I also work with the Millennium Project. In the Millennium Project, we publish every year a book. So let me show you. This is the year 2050. We have scenarios about the year 2050. In one scenario, we are immortal already in 2050. That's my favorite scenario. But besides this, we also have the State of the Future, which is our yearly book, The State of the Future, edition 20.0. So these books are to open up our minds, because we need to see the future, to think about the future.
Where do you get access to those books?
Everything now is in internet, in Amazon, or directly with the Millennium Project.
Okay.
This is obviously Amazon. Also, I like because two other authors for different reasons. One is Michio Kaku, this Japanese American. He's fully American, but obviously his parents were Japanese. He writes fantastic books. And he, for example, The Physics of the Impossible. It's a great book. And The Physics of the Future. And he wrote also about quantum computing, many things. Anyway, he's a very interesting thinker. And by the way, he recommends The Death of Death. So this is also important. Yes, here in the back, you will see recommendations by George, Michio Kaku, and Ray Kurzweil. Another one, which I think is quite interesting, that talks about immortality, is the Israeli historian Yuval Noah Harari. Harari actually talks about immortality, and for a historian to talk about immortality, it's fascinating, but he thinks it will take 1 century or 2 centuries, when I think it's going to take 1 decade, maybe 2 decades to become immortal. So he has a long historical perspective. He misses the exponentiality of these technological advances. So anyway, Yuval Noah Harari, he has sold millions of copies in every language.
Thank you so much, Jose. It was wonderful to have you on our show.
My pleasure, and because I love Star Trek, and Star Wars and Stargate, anything Star related, because I want to go to other planets, I like to say, like Mr. Spock, live long and prosper, which is beautiful. Live long and live prosper. So live long and prosper, my friends. And see you in the future, and certainly in 2045, when we will remember today when we were old.